Hello dear students, in this video we are going to continue further on the GAT movements. In the previous video we saw all about the major movements. In this video we are going to see some of the specialized movements like the mastication, deglutition and defecation reflex. So out of these three, the deglutition is one of the most important topics which might be asked in short note answers also, and it is one of the most interesting thing to study also. So let's go one by one. First, coming to mastication. Mastication is a simple reflex wherein we are chewing the food. So this is called as mastication, and the process of chewing food in the mouth is called as mastication. So what is the purpose of mastication is, first one, it is to break down the food and it helps to mix with the saliva. Here the saliva has salivary amylase which helps to start the digestion of the carbohydrates, and it will help to form the bolus also. So that is also one of the important thing about mastication. And when you chew the food properly, you will be able to appreciate the taste sensations of the food also. So these are the major important purpose through which the mastication has to happen. And what is the chewing reflex? The chewing reflex is very simple. Whenever there is a food in the mouth, what happens is naturally there is some inhibition of the jaw closing muscle. So now what will happen? The jaw will slightly open because there is food in the mouth. The jaw closing muscles are stopping, so the jaw will open. This will initiate a type of stretch reflex and the jaw closes reflexively. That's why once you put them out, naturally the movement of chewing starts to happen. Then the jaw closes, then the rhythmic chewing movements keeps on happening. So this is all about the mastication reflex. Next, coming to the important reflex, that is the swallowing reflex or the deglutition reflex. Since it is a major reflex, I will explain. Generally, all the reflexes, when you talk about any kind of reflex, there will be a receptor which will be initiating the reflex. A receptor will send something and it will send the afferents to the integrating center, and from the integrating center, now it will think like this person is having this type of change in his body which is sensed by the receptor, and it will send the efferents, and finally they will end up in an effector organ or the effector muscles. So this is how naturally all the reflexes will happen. Now let's try to understand what are the things that happens in this swallowing reflex. So first, coming to the receptor is nothing but the epithelial receptors which are present in the oral cavity. They will sense it. And next, when the swallowing is happening, like you are chewing something and then you are trying to swallow it or ingest it, then the afferent from the trigeminal nerve, glossopharyngeal nerve and vagus nerve. All these nerves which are present at the back of the tongue as well as the pharynx, they will get initiated. From here, they will send it to the brain and they will reach the integrating center in the medulla. So medulla is the integrating center, and there are two important nucleus where these reflexes will go and reach. One is the nucleus tractus solitarius. This we have studied in the cardiovascular system also. Nucleus tractus solitarius. This is one of the most important area, I would say, wherein the confluence of baroreceptors, chemoreceptors and all other receptors come into action. The next is nucleus ambiguus. Na is nucleus ambiguus. So they will sense it. Now this is the integrating center, and from here we have to send the efferents. The efferents again will come via trigeminal, facial and hypoglossal. Where they will come and act? They will come and act on the tongue so that it pushes the bolus behind and the pharyngeal muscles. So here the effectors will come into action. So now let's see how this various phases of the swallowing happens, and there are generally three important phases. The first one is called as the oral phase, that happens in the oral cavity, and only the oral phase is a voluntary phase. Rest after that, the pharyngeal as well as the esophageal phase happens involuntarily. So the second phase is pharyngeal, wherein the pharyngeal muscles play an important role, and the third phase is esophageal. So let's take the help of this diagram and see what happens. First, the food is formed in the mouth, and with the help of the process that we start mastication, the food is chewed and it is formed as a bolus. Then once the bolus is formed, we have to swallow in through. Here first it will reach the pharynx, but after the pharynx there are two places where it can go. One is the esophagus, another one is the respiratory tract, and one more area is also present. It can regurgitate into the nasal cavity. So one is the correct place to go with, then these two options are not going to be fine, because When it goes into the pharynx, then the food regurgitation will happen. He will have a severe cough reflex. When it comes to the nasopharynx, there also the regurgitation will happen and the food will come into the nose. So once it reaches the pharynx, two things I have to close. One is the nasopharynx, another one is the larynx or the windpipe. So how does it get closed? Here the nasopharynx, the soft palate will try to come back and close this nasopharynx. Then next, the epiglottis, which was initially like this, now it is slowly coming and closing the windpipe. So the epiglottis was like this, now it comes to this position to close it properly. So this is how the epiglottis closes it. Now once the epiglottis has closed it, as well as the nasopharynx has closed it, there is only one other option left, that it has to move into the esophagus. So when this happening, what happens to the breathing? Nasopharynx is also closed, epiglottis is also closed. So the breathing stops temporarily. Then after that, once the food enters a little bit down into the esophagus, again the breathing will resume. It is for just a few seconds. So now let's go step by step. So first one is the oral phase. The oral phase, as I told, this is the voluntary phase. I have to think that I am going to swallow this food. So it happens at the level of cerebral cortex and the tongue pushes the food behind. So it is a simple phase where it is just pushing. Coming to the pharyngeal phase, it is very important. First thing is it is involuntary, and as I told, we have to close two important regions. The soft palate will close the posterior nares and the epiglottis will close the airways. So these are the two important regions. Then the palatopharyngeal muscles will approximate, and there is generally a prevention there also, the upper esophageal sphincter. Now the food has come, so the upper esophageal sphincter has to slowly relax. This sphincter is there to prevent some secretions from the windpipe to enter into the esophagus. So that is prevented. But right now, the upper esophageal sphincter, they will slowly relax. Once they relax, the pharynx contracts and the breathing stops temporarily. So these two areas has to be closed. That is the most important point. The soft palate and the epiglottis takes care of that. So next, we enter the esophageal phase. In the esophageal phase, there are two types of peristalsis which are happening. One is called as the primary peristalsis and the second one is secondary peristalsis. Primary peristalsis happens because of the contraction of the pharyngeal muscles. They will start or initiate the peristalsis in the esophagus. But the secondary peristalsis is because of the stretch of the food. Once the food entered into the esophagus, like the peristalsis which we saw it in the GAT, it will cause contraction above and relaxation below. That is by the stretch. That is the secondary peristalsis. So this is all about the deglutition reflex. Next, coming to the defecation reflex. So the defecation reflex is nothing but the elimination of the waste from the gastrointestinal system, like the feces is sent out from the GET. Here there are two important sphincters which are controlling the evacuation. One is the internal anal sphincter and external anal sphincter. At baseline itself, both the anal sphincter will have a resting tone because it should not be loose. The food starts to accumulate in the rectum. Till that time, the internal anal sphincter and the external anal sphincter, both of them keep the anal cavity closed. So the internal anal sphincter is under the control of sympathetic system and parasympathetic system. The parasympathetic system will help to relax the sphincters via the pelvic nerves. The external anal sphincter, it is actually a skeletal muscle which can be controlled voluntarily with the help of pudendal nerve. That's why sometimes when you feel like feeling of defecation is there, still you will be able to control it for some amount of time. It's not like you can keep on controlling it for an entire period or a very long period. But generally when this feeling of sensation comes first, if you are in a place where you don't have a proper washroom or something, you can control it for some amount of time. That is, the external anal sphincter is controlled under the voluntary control with the help of pudendal nerves. Then what happens is, whenever there is a rectal filling, there is distension of the rectal wall, this stretch will be sensed by the myoenteric plexus and they will send impulses to the spinal cord. From there, the S2 to S4 segments of the sacrum, the pudendal nerves will emerge and there will be voluntary relaxation of the external anal sphincter. So the external anal sphincter, when you think voluntarily, then they can be relaxed easily. So here one more important muscle which plays into a role is puborectalis. The puborectalis keeps the angle between the rectum and the anal canal, that is also called as the anorectal angle, more acute. More acute means it is less in angle. Then if the puborectalis muscles relaxes, this can be done voluntarily. So when it relaxes, what will happen? The angle becomes more obtuse. The angle is increased and the canal is having a straight descent so that the feces can be evacuated easily. So now let's see the pressures, how they are generated. So as I told, the tonal of the external anal sphincter and internal anal sphincter, they already have a tone. As and when the rectum gets distended, for example, the rectal distension is given in the below region. So the rectum is distending more and more and more. When the rectum or the feces is starting to accumulate, what will happen? The anal sphincters we are trying to hold. Suppose if you don't want to evacuate, what will happen? The anal sphincter pressure can be increased also. So as you can see here, the anal sphincter in the external anal sphincter can be increased. But once the situation becomes favorable, you want to defecate it, the external anal sphincter can be voluntarily relaxed and there is a huge drop in the pressure. So they are relaxed, so defecation reflex can happen. Coming to the internal anal sphincter, the internal anal sphincter, as and when the rectum gets full, there are some areas where the anal sphincter's pressure gets relaxed. But if it gets relaxed very nicely, there is a complete relaxation of the muscle, then only the evacuation will happen. So the first urge for defecation comes at around 18 mm of Hg, but more than 55, that's what I told you, beyond a certain limit, you will not be able to control the defecation reflex. That happens above 55 mm of Hg, wherein both the sphincter will be relaxed and the person will not be able to hold it further. So these are some of the reflexes you should be knowing, and the most important of these three is the deglutition reflex, which has three phases: oral, pharyngeal and esophageal reflex. I hope it's clear. Thank you for watching the video. We'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much.